Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Weighing In, brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. Flying just the two of us today, me, Grant Turner, my good buddy, Mark Ostrander is busy doing a takeover of the entire train system in the United States. We'll probably be reading about it soon. He is bummed out whenever he can't make it, but if this was an episode for him to miss and for you to be on, you coming right back from the final chance tournament or last chance qualifier, right way to say it, final opportunity to qualify for the Olympics. You're the guy to have on this week. So first of all, let me say good morning to you, brother, and just tell everybody about, I think most people can see results. We'll discuss results, obviously, but just what's the energy like in a room like that where literally fortunes are made and lost, like careers are ending, people's financial well-being, like especially in these foreign countries. Like, I've talked with like Sergey Beloglazov and some of these other people, how much difference it makes for the rest of their life if they're an Olympian or an Olympic medalist.
Well, I think just the energy within the facility itself, it was a very, very intimate arena. So it was 3 mats wide. So like it was pretty steep, but it was very close knit. So, and the Turkish fans were outstanding. They had like either some little kids clubs or like just the neighborhood people came out to like witness it. But they had some of the presenting sponsors of, like the medals and all that kind of stuff was like Turkish wrestling legends, board members, guys from their history come out. So tons of energy in the facility. And then of course, like everybody's shelling out for that last 3 spots. So the wrestling was top notch. And, when we were over there talking about it, like this might be one of the toughest tournaments outside of the World Championships. I think it might be the toughest tournament, because there was just so much on the line. Olympic silver medalists staying at home. Yeah. Guys that have been wrestling in 4 Olympics, like taking their shoes off, like just a crazy emotional day on either end. And then of course, the pullback, right? So like it's true World Championship style, repechage matches. So it's like, oh, okay, well now we're all humongous fans of AIN. Like all of a sudden it's like, dude, like you got to go. Like you're
pat on the butt, towel right. Down.
Hey, listen, I know you just beat my guy, but like, hey, I need you to focus, man. I need you to make finals.
You got to lock in, dog. Let's go.
What you doing?
Let's go. Yeah, so for, I guess, people that don't necessarily understand international wrestling, and it's fine, like if I lose to Grant has to make the finals for me to get pulled back through. And then the way the pullback through works is if it's a 64-man bracket or woman bracket, the loser of the guy that made the finals, 64 wrestles the 32 guy. The winner of that wrestles the 16 guy. The winner of that wrestles the 8 guy. The winner of that wrestles the 4 guy, which is the semis. Then when you come through all of that, then you cross down and wrestle the guy that came through the other side for true third. So it's a fascinating process because, we are so used to true double elimination. Like I was coaching last night in my basement and somebody was looking at my state bracket and they're like, it's not the same bracket as now. And what I realized when I wrestled, if you lost and your guy lost, you were out. Your guy had to make the semis in Missouri back then. So there's a round of backsides that was eliminated. So we're used to just true wrestle back. And, we like Tyler Kasich, right? Like he loses first round and runs the gauntlet, warrior of the weekend kind of thing, wins 7-8 matches, takes third. And he's the argument for losing first round, like to an Abbas who didn't make the finals, or I don't even know if he placed, or maybe placed, but he placed below Kasich. And, hey, this is why we do true double elim. International, this is to keep the timing of the tournament under control. You mean be there all freaking day. And like you said, if you beat me, I'm rooting for you, dog. Like, let's go. Hey, man, you need a juice? You need a water? What can I get you?
Like, yeah, what do we need? Like, this needs to go our way.
Yeah. So to walk through the results, Dalton Roberts went 0-1 at 60 kgs on the Greco side. Let's actually go this way. The women had already qualified all 6 weights, so they got to stay at home.
Correct.
We qualified 3 of the 6 in Greco, the 3 heaviest weights, and then 60, 67, and 77, we were there to qualify, and Dalton did not get through. He went 0-1. Ellis went 1-1, and when we say 0-1 and 1-1, they lost to guys that didn't make the finals. Okay.
Correct.
Right. Then Kamal lost first round, which on paper looked terrible, but he lost to a finalist. And the other thing is this. So like if somebody says, well, did he lose to the champ or the runner up? The finalist did not wrestle because it did not matter. It's just top 3 are in. So if Grant and I make the finals, in that situation, I would save myself an unnecessary beating. So because we're both in the bracket. So, but Kamal got pulled through and then wrestled his tail off. Like, won several matches, got all the way to the true third, and then lost. And he lost because he lost. The other guy got both the passivity points against Kamal. Kamal never got a chance on top. Threw the kitchen sink at him for about the last 30 seconds, just couldn't get it done. And it just goes to show, I think, and I'm really interested on your opinion on this, because you're around it a lot. I actually loved Greco growing up. I was pretty good at it. Made a world team. My dad was a judo guy, so a lot of those skills transition over. It's so important now with the way scoring is in Greco that you control the center of the mat, that you initiate positive first contact, that you're always taking ground. And Kamal's opponent in the 3rd place match did a better job of it, at least according to the referees. And I think it's kind of hard to argue if you just kind of did a statistical advantage of who is going forward or backwards more. I mean, I think if Kamal could have got on top once, he wins the match. He's so dynamic at lifting. Plus, the match is 1-1, and he's got second point instead of, 2-0 plus whatever other points the guy scored. So your opinion about his match, his run, anything tied to Kamal?
So, yeah, I mean, like, I would think that when you basically you think of Kamal going 0-1 and you're like, oh, well, he just didn't wrestle. Like, he just looked like crap, right? So then all of a sudden, the AIN, that's we'll call it the Russian.
Yeah.
Because his coaches are from Russia. He's from Russia, but he's representing AIN. So historically, the Russian Greco athletes are pretty legit.
Yeah.
So a lot of just want to give props where props are due. Like, Kamal lost to a stud. Then that guy ended up going all the way, making it past the semis and qualifying for the Olympics. And then Kamal's run on the backside, man, he looked good.
Yes.
Once again, the style in which Greco is, I mean, to your point, it's an appreciated style. It's different than freestyle. It's scored differently. It's viewed differently. Once again, in the aspect of passivity, where Kamal got put down twice, that hardly ever happens. I would just like to when you watch that, you really have to be passive. I don't think Kamal was as passive as I've seen in other matches where they give one guy an opportunity, they give the next guy the other opportunity in the second period. So I don't think it necessarily warranted the Hungarian to be able to be on top twice, but that's the rules. If it's passive and it's subjectivity where it's, hey, you're getting put down, and passivity doesn't mean that there's no action. It means that there's no scoring. So I think that's
a great distinction to make. Yes.
So when they're like, hey, hey, you gotta get going. It's like, well, they're not asking you to pick up the pace. There's been no scoring, so I have to do this. So I think that's a very easy way for you to once again, not yell at the officials, but yell at the officials. is that like he's not being passive. He's not stalling, as we would say in America. It just means that there's no points scored.
You cannot have a scoreless first period.
Right.
Like that's in the rule book. So people need to understand that, and that's in freestyle too. And it's different. Like they eventually have to hit one of us, put us on a shot clock. And then if nothing happens, if I'm on the clock, you get a point. And if something else happens, then whatever else happens, but there has to be a point. You can have a scoreless second period if there was multiple points in the first period, but you can't have a scoreless second period if the only point in the first period was an activity point.
Yeah, and I think that the one thing about Greco is that regardless, like there's going to be 2 penalty points. So that's how Kamal got basically the 2 points against him. So like 1 for the passivity point for getting put down, 1 for the step out on the second passivity point when they made the whatever, he got put down again and got pushed out, or it was off the first passivity point. So it was like 2-0, got put back.
It was off that lift. It was off that lift, and he countered it great, but he stepped out in the counter. Yeah,
correct. And Levi he's a world silver medalist. Like he rattled off, I think it was in Serbia in 2022. He rattled off like, I don't know, legitimately, I think like 9 wins in a row to go to the finals. So the guy's pretty talented. He also represented the UWW Dream Team in 2022 as well, or 2023.
World Cup, right?
That World Cup for Greco. So the guy's super talented, but I think Kamal, once again, I thought that was one of the best tournaments he's been in for a long time.
Yes.
Beating the Georgian Lomadze, basically pulling out a nice pinch headlock as he was like running at Olofsson from Sweden. And Olofsson's, multiple time European medalist.
His hit list in that tournament was really impressive. So again, I'm trying not to put my red, white, and blue goggles on here, but should we be upset that he didn't get a chance on top? And let me explain something else to people. They have the right, like let's say you go on top first period, I go on top second period, it's 1-1. They can give a third passivity, but the third passivity doesn't come with a point. It only comes with parterre. Correct.
They just give you another opportunity to score in parterre, but it's just like
because they don't want to. They want referees deciding the match. Like, hey, we're going to put you. It's way easier to score from top than from neutral in Greco. Like It's almost the opposite of freestyle. Like freestyle, unless you're like Spencer Lee or Vito, it's easier to score on your feet than on top. So, I mean, to go back to my question, is there any legitimacy to us being upset that Kamal didn't get a chance on top?
I mean, anytime that, like, I don't want to say out of process, where they give an opportunity to an athlete twice is out of process, because it's not. But yes, you can be upset. I mean, you can put on your Star Spangled Banner hat and be like, yeah, we should have had an opportunity in the second period in order to be in parterre. 100% something that you could, have a necessary gripe about. But it's not outside of the rule book for somebody to be put down twice. I mean, I personally believe, in my professional wrestling opinion, that Kamal did enough to warrant
getting on top one time.
Getting on top once. But all the Greco boys know that that's a possibility. So like, it's not outside of like, they're not upset because they know that those are the rules. Like, so I mean, when you're in the know as a Greco athlete, like, that that's an opportunity that like that could happen. It's not. Yeah. So, and I think Kamal will be the first to tell you, like, like he wrestled really well, but like he was just came up short in that match. And once again, wrestling matches are wrestling matches. For him to be in that match all the way to the wrestle back, basically the 17th best guy in the world.
Yeah.
That's
a great way to say it. That's such a great way to say it. Yeah. He's number 17 in the world.
But I think as an American, once again, putting my Uncle Sam hat on here, I think a solid takeaway as an American Greco fan is like, hey man, we got to qualify at Pan Ams. I think that is
freaking men. And that's the same thing when we're going to get to men's freestyle here in a second. Let's take all the drama out of it, please. Like, all right, we'll come back to that. Go ahead.
Well, I think there's an aspect of, and I mean, I'll tell anybody that will listen, that tournament in Istanbul was a meat grinder for everybody involved. Every single weight class, every single qualifying weight there had hitters in it, due to either like illness. Once again, the Euros are extremely tough continental championship. The Asians are extremely talented in their continental championship. The Africo-Oceanic ones, there was a ton of guys that would be able to make it through to those matches. The Pan Ams did a pretty good job of trying to qualify at all of those weight classes. But it was just one of those things that, like, you don't want to go to Istanbul because that is a tough last chance effort. And as you can see, like, there's hitters that go down every single round.
Let's review process so people can understand this to illustrate your point specifically. Let's say there's 75, 80 countries in the world that wrestle, okay? You can only get to the Olympics 3 ways: World Championships, your Continental, or the last chance qualifier. Okay, just so people understand that. So 75 teams pour into the Worlds, 5 come out. Okay, now you're down to 70. So I'm going to just do some quick and dirty math and just say, hey, 18 countries go to each of their continentals. I don't know if I'm sure that's inaccurate, but just ballpark, 15 to 20. Our continental is not the hardest continental. Okay, you would agree with that, right, GT?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make the finals of your continental. And if you don't, now the 2, 4, 6, 8, the top 2 of each continental get plucked out. So now out of 75 countries, 13 are out. Okay, you got 62 left fighting for 3 spots. Now, the number's probably not that big because you don't see any 64-man brackets or 64-woman brackets. But there's 32 brackets with pigtails. Okay, I mean, it's a big number. So, and you can lose. The worst thing that happens is, like, you're really good and I stink and I reach back and headlock you and pin you. Well, now you're done because I ain't making the finals. Like that. That was my move. That was it. That was my moment. So it's not like USA Wrestling doesn't understand. It's not like every country in the world doesn't understand this. Okay, it's not like the K.O. Sanderson, you got a plan or something. It's just important for people to understand that if we don't make it through the Pan Ams, it's way harder. It's probably harder to take 3rd at the last chance qualifier than it is to take 2nd at the Pan Ams. And that's why it's important that we send the right person to the Pan Ams if we don't medal at the Worlds. And Ostrander, before you joined this podcast, used to always make fun of me. And not like make fun of me, but just tease me because I'm like, hey, Grant made the 2018 World Team. Like, if he medals, he now sits in 2019 Final X. And if he makes that team in medals, he's now in the Olympic trial finals. Like, it starts, 2025 Worlds is the start of the process. If you can stay in that Final X loop and top medals at Worlds, you're in good shape. So really important to understand that process. Okay, so that's Greco. We qualified the last 3 weights as a country. So shout out to Jacobson, Rao, and Kuhn. What's crazy is none of those guys qualified the weight, but they all beat the guy that qualified the weight. So kind of bonkers there. If we work weight classes reverse order in men's freestyle, Paris qualified the weight and won the trials. Snyder qualified the weight and won the trials. Taylor qualified the weight. Brooks won the trials. Dake qualified the weight and won the trials. So we are staring at 57 and 65. Both of these guys, Spencer Lee and Zane Rutherford, let's jump to the end. They both qualified the weights. Did so in different ways. Both were tested. Both showed a ton of courage, grit, determination, mental, physical, spiritual toughness. Spencer did it through the front side. His toughest match was against the Chinese wrestler So as a guy that I'm sure had his eyes on that mat, kind of walk us through your feelings as a Team USA guy. You want as many people there as possible, obviously. And, watching that match, what were your thoughts there?
Well, I think, you're nervous for the guys. So once again, country centric again. Like, I'm putting on my red, white, and blue goggles.
Yeah.
You want to have the men's freestyle team represented at all 6 weights. I think everybody from every country wants to have as many people from their country go and be in the bracket as they possibly can. So the outlook, I think the outlook for Spencer, we just didn't know what we had in him. And then I think basically, once again, I think as Americans, we're like, oh yeah, no, Spencer Lee's one of the greatest of all time. Like, he's going to be fine. You're like, well, these are tough brackets. So like, he goes out there and basically he puts on a clinic in parterre. Like, I think he scored like whatever it was, like 34 points in parterre. And like, he only really surrendered, like he had like maybe a half a second lapse in judgment when Zhao was like took him down. But like, once again, takedowns happen, and it's you're never going to just go 10-0, 10-0, 10-0, 10-0, 10-0, 10-0 throughout the entire tournament. But like, Spencer did a pretty dang good job. And then I think, once again, a little bit of a shout out to just the Iowa wrestling program for keeping, Spencer Lee focused through the process of the Olympic trials tournament. He wasn't the guy. He wasn't Zane Richards. He didn't represent the country in the 2023 Worlds. He didn't go to qualify the weight class at Pan Ams. And he just goes through the tournament of the United States, which is extremely tough at the Olympic team trials in State College, solidifies himself as the spot. And then, basically 2 weeks later, he's like on a plane to Istanbul to try to qualify the weight class for the Worlds.
And he was the 4 seed in our trials, correct? Because he was on the top half with Zane. Yeah, yep. It was Gilman. It was Zane, Gilman, Fix, Spencer for seeds.
So, I think that also goes into a place of like, oh my gosh, what a run this guy's been on. Like, to go through the United States Olympic trials process with those matches with those guys, and then to go on to Istanbul and basically make that run against all of those extremely talented international athletes. But as dominant as Spencer was, I think the takeaway is how gritty and outstanding Zane Rutherford wrestled. I mean, like, I think Spencer was dominant, but I think that the matches that Zane had to do in order to qualify was bananas.
So let's put a bow real quick on Spencer. Yeah. You're absolutely right. He had 4 opportunities on top. Somebody posted, and he scored. It was either 32 or 34 points. So he's averaging 8 points on top.
Yeah,
that bodes well for him for the Olympics, because you can get taken down 2-3 times and get one and be right back in the match. So Zane loses in the quarterfinals, gets pulled through, and then again, Punchline makes it, and his toughest match was not his last match. I believe he won his last match 7-0. But, this guy had a career in finance. Like, he was going to do what I've been doing,
Yeah.
And just sucked it up. I think all of us, when we were making picks at different weight classes, were like, what's Zane going to look like at 65, right? Because he looked so good at 70. Like, he looked a full-grown man at 70, world champ at 70, right? So, like, I think that was the thing we thought about him and Vito. Can they make it down, right? Because, like Marsteller didn't even try. Vito ended up trying and just realizing his body couldn't do it, right? Zane goes down there and looks like he never wrestled 70. Like, if you didn't know better, you would never know he had wrestled 70. Like, he just looked awesome. And he wins on cardio. So, like, his style, you have to be like, okay, like, he can't pick his spots. Like, he's got to hand fight you to death. So talk about his path.
Well, I think one of the things that I think to also basically piggyback off of what we discussed with Spencer is, like, Spencer's at the lowest weight class. So, like, it's either somebody from 61 coming down to 57, but there's nobody coming up to 57. So you have 57 and 61. You also have the inverse with Zane. You have everybody that could be at 61, 65, and or 70.
Yes.
All combined for this tournament in Istanbul to try to qualify. So it's like you could have killers at 3 different weight classes.
Yes.
Trying to like, go to the Olympics at the Olympic weight class at 65 kg. So all of that being said, it was an epic match between him and Toga Tumar Uçur from Mongolia. And then all of a sudden, we're all fans of Mongolia. Like, dude, like we need you to.
Yeah, you got to pull through, dog.
Yeah, you got to pull through, man. And then I think in that match, in the semifinals, he wrestled the athlete from the Indian Wrestling Federation. And it was a tight battle. And like, we're sitting on the edge of our seats, like it's like, dude, we need this. Like, we have to have
it. Was a shot clock bout so
late.
late. Like I think it was 2-1, and then the losing wrestler went crazy, and our guy caught him for 4 to win 6-1, but it was really a 2-1 match.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, but then
listen to me, our guy.
Right. Yeah. Just throw a train conductor hat on, and you are literally Mark. Yeah.
For sure.
First name Mark. Here we go. My guy, cool guy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then I think I would have to. I'm gonna pull it up here just so I can make sure that I'm talking correctly. But It's like, I think it was a Kudakov, yes, I believe it was Kudakov that he wrestled from Tajikistan, who was I believe a former world medalist.
Yeah.
And then I think at he had to beat the Russian in the Paris Olympic playoff match. He also had to beat the athlete from India, which was the Bajrang replacement, or basically the new heir apparent to that weight class. I think he's Sujit is his name, and he's 21 years old. So like, kid's got
that was the hard match on the backside for in terms of scoring, right? Because so to kind of walk people through this, just a couple situations, and I want to talk specifically about Zane's hand fight too. But against Sujit, Zane gets like a go behind, and Sujit breaks the grip, turns around and takes Zane down, and then Zane scores later on a go behind. Like all the points were scored off counter offense. And one of the counter offense positions, like it feels like Zane's more likely to score 4 there than Sujit is to score 2. So I mean, and you kind of watch that match and go, oh my God, we're not going to make the team. We're not going to qualify the weight because of like a 1 in 1,000 scenario, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's bananas. And I think for everybody that maybe doesn't necessarily know the athletes as like the name game, where you're like, oh well, like who is this dude? It's like, okay, well, use the United World Wrestling website, and then like when you go to like the matches, you can click on the individual athlete, and then you can go to their results, and you can see like what they've done in their career.
Yeah.
So like when you go and look at some of these athletes that are like already qualified for the World Championships, you can go and say like, okay, well, whatever it is, Zane is going to have potentially Dudayev from Albania. And you're like, okay, well, I don't know anything about that guy. And you pull up his results, and you're like, well, he was the gold medalist at the Senior European Championships. He got 9th in the Worlds in 2023, or like all of these things where you're like, okay, well, whatever.
You know what's crazy? This is the other thing. So, like, the other way to look at it is Spencer Lee was the number 4 seed in our country, right? So these guys are like, and I know he had a ton of age group world success. Okay, so, but he hasn't wrestled in an international tournament in forever at the senior level.
Right.
And so people are like, people around the world are like, who the hell is Spencer Lee, right? Like, we all know. So there's a million of those guys from around the world, these other countries, like, we'll have plenty of time to preview the Olympics, but like if you look at these two weights, like Spencer's in the same weight with Darian Cruz, RBY, those kind of guys, like people we know, like it's Gomez, it's Sebastian Rivera in with Zane, right? And those guys like placed ahead of like Yanni at Worlds, placed ahead of, beat Nick Lee head to head to make the weight class, right? And that's a perfect example. If Nick Lee wins that match against Gomez, Gomez has to go run this gauntlet, not Zane Rutherford. Zane Rutherford's just in. And so it's just so much easier to win a match that you were up 10-4 in than to do what these guys just did. Because, I mean, these guys are the best in the world at peaking cycles, like training, like peaking, all this stuff. And you had to peak for trials, and you got to peak for last chance. Now you got to peak for Olympics. If you can just take one of those, that middle peak out, it's a lot easier to have optimal performance come August. Just easier on your body, if nothing else. So, but anyway, congrats. America gets 15 of the 18 in. And if you look at the historical performance of the athletes, along with what we saw at the qualifier, Ellis hadn't wrestled in over 2 years. Dalton made the team, but had not beaten a bunch of guys. I don't think he's beaten anybody in that bracket that's in the Olympics. Kamal, like really, like if we're greedy, well, if you're greedy, it's 18. If you're sort of realistically greedy, 16 is sort of a best case scenario. So to get 15 through is pretty awesome. So, I think, there'll be a ton of posts all summer long from USA Wrestling and Flow and Track and Intermat and Rockfin and everybody else who covers wrestling, all the different podcasters out there, but how many different over the 3 styles, who's got the most in, but we pretty much got to be near the top of the list, with 15. So I want to tell you one last thing about the hand fight, and you coach, and I still consider myself a coach. I got to sit in some good corners in Vegas. We got to celebrate that a little bit. Zane, in the match he lost, got warned multiple times, and it was about to be a caution in one for his hands to the head. And I think he's going to have to adjust that, because I think it's a way somebody could take a match from him. Like the referee, she was like, I don't want to call this, like, stop doing that, right? And they did it like 3 or 4 times. Usually the 4th time they hit somebody with a point and a caution. So I'm sure the Nittany Lion crew is working on that, but it just stuck out to me as something. And I think we actually texted about it while you were overseas, just like, hey, this is something he's got to keep an eye on, because, you don't want to give anybody a chance to take the match from you. Like, politics are a major thing here. So you and I talked off air. Chamizo doesn't qualify. You said you think it's probably over. It'll be interesting to see if he pursues anything legally, but kind of crazy that Chamizo is not going to be in the Olympics. Just if you love wrestling and just how that guy wrestles, his creativity, I think he's a Nike athlete, right? So like just watching him wrestle, you have a relationship with Frank. It's disappointing if you're just a wrestling fan that he's not going to be in the Olympics, right?
Yeah, I think when you have, and once again, I would say that probably for a majority of the wrestling fans out there, like you've seen Chamizo, because he'll go wrestle anybody. He's wrestled Dake before Dake was world champ. And then like, he's one of the best wrestlers in the history of Italy. So it's hard to see some of those guys basically not be a part of the game or be a part of the games. And I think that there's tons of guys that like from specific countries that are not there. Right. So like, I mean, I don't know how many people, and once again, not to switch topics, but I don't know how many people ask me about like, oh my gosh, what is David Taylor going to do? Pound for pound, one of the best wrestlers on the planet. He's like, he's not a part of the games. Right. So it's, there's just all sorts of different, like either retirements, matches that aren't there, people that step away from the sport, or the injuries, if they're just not a part of the games, like you don't have those moments. Right. So
I don't remember if you were, I don't know if you were on with us, but, and I don't even know if I said this out loud, but think about the last time we had a world or Olympic team that didn't have Jaden, Taylor, Gilman, or Burroughs? Like it's probably 2010, 2011.
Well, yeah, it would have been probably 2010 because JB has been a part of like almost every single world team.
Right. I mean, from 2011 to 24 or 23, he made every team except I think the one that Marsteller beat him, and then those other guys were on the team. So right. it's a guard changing, right? Like, I mean, this is, we're seeing it happen. It's a good segue into the Oklahoma State hire. I think we've all heard kind of crazy stories. I'll tell you this, and like I think we're all on a journey to improve as people. I've spent more time in the last 10 days hearing stories about people instead of talking about concepts and events and improving and creating win-wins in life. And I hope it dies down. It doesn't make my stomach feel good, like, and none of it's bad. It's just like, I don't feel like talking about people and their backgrounds and all their laundry. Like, it's just, can we just talk about how we got here? But, I don't know if we've got your reaction, but, Taylor goes to Oklahoma State, brings Gilman, brings Kennedy, has 2 more official slots to fill, one on the coaching staff, one on the RTC staff. The primary rumor running around is Dake, after he's done competing at the Olympics, that he would retire and go to the RTC, but none of that's been verified. But the 3 guys at Oklahoma State are verified, and that affects the portal and things like that. So your thoughts on the Oklahoma State hire of DT?
Well, I think here's the 50,000 foot view is I think Oklahoma State is one of the most coveted positions in all of collegiate athletics when it comes to, or collegiate wrestling. It is literally, the New York Yankees or the LA Dodgers. Like it is a coveted position in sport because once again of the tradition and all the other aspects of like what you can achieve or what has been achieved already there by the greats that have come before him. The Myron Rodericks, Joe Say, the John Smiths, Chesborough, like all these guys that have been a part of that, lineage at Oklahoma State. And I think if you do well there, you can be, basically a coaching legend, and you have a fan base and a state that basically follows the Pokes pretty closely. So I think the opportunity for David to be associated with that brand and bringing his own brand there is magic.
It's magical. Oh.
Yeah.
GT has been, I feel like that was not off the top of the dome. I feel like you've been having that ready to fire. Well done, sir. Well done. Yeah.
So, but I think, for David's staff, I think that there's still, once again, I think that there's still some adjustments to be made. I don't know what those are. I don't know who. I haven't talked to David. I haven't talked to anybody down there. I haven't talked to anybody about what things could be happening on the RTC side. Once again, all of the other positions that associate with that program. So I think that there's still a lot to be determined by all of them. So I think the biggest thing for DT is like, he's got a lot on his plate in order to get started. I mean, there's a lot probably of interviews and learning the systems and all that other stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I think with the caveat to be respectful of the prior staff, Coleman and Perry and Gary Wayne Harding and Caldwell. I think there's just a moment in time to appreciate what they've done for Oklahoma State, and like then the new regime coming in. It's never easy when basically a staff is dissolved or relinquished of their position. So I hope that people are sensitive to that. And I think as much as we all love David Taylor and we're excited about what the new hire would be, I think we also just have to make sure that there is the other aspect or the other side of the coin for the guys that were previously there.
100, man. And first of all, you'll be down at the Hall of Fame induction ceremony in a couple weeks, so you'll probably hear a lot. I think most people know my family has a great relationship with Coach Smith. You know, my dad goes fishing with John. My mom and Tony are friends. Like when they go to Stillwater, they stay with them. You know, I recruited Caldwell. I was at Chris Perry's wedding. I helped run Hall of Fame duels. So like, it's not, that relationship is different than like another school where it's just, you see the guys at the US Open, you shake their hands, maybe a couple of them have been on the podcast. So it's a different level of appreciation and thank you and frankly, friendship. I texted with Caldwell. It looks like for the time being, he's staying. I don't know if that's permanent or temporary, but you know, he's done an unbelievable job along with Perry in leading the recruiting process there. And Fick sounds like he's staying in the RTC and that they will actually now create an RTC because for a while they just had a club. And I think that'll be important. So you know, I think like you said it, the word iconic is the one I think of that job, right? Like, the place where you can sort of, if you win a bunch, you can be a legend anywhere, right? Like if you have John Wooden's record in basketball, he could have done it at San Diego State and he'd still be a legend. But UCLA is like a school, you know, like a big time school. And like Oklahoma State and Iowa feel like they've got the longest track record of people caring about wrestling in that state. And the amount of money, if any of the rumors are true, the amount of money that's been injected into that program and has been promised or committed to that program going forward, there's a real commitment to, we're going to give you the tools you need to succeed. I am firmly in the Ben Askren camp that you don't have to have the best wrestling room, like facility wise, to win. Like you need enough match, you need a nice locker room, you got to have weights, you know, you need a cold tub, you need a sauna and steam room and stuff. But like, if your room has 6 mats and my room has 8 mats, and that's the only difference, you can beat me. It's a non-issue. You know, like there's probably a marginal difference between 2 mats and 1, because to how many people you can train, but there becomes a point of overkill. So it feels like that's a crutch. And I think the other stuff is getting an RTC, being able to recruit world-class athletes. 9.9 scholarships are the thing of the past now. You know that, I know that. Like, it's how many people can you get in? How are they going to approach the portal, right? So like Alira's is in the portal. Hendrickson is in the portal. He made a visit to Oklahoma State. You know, for all the people that thought they weren't going to hire Taylor, the quicker hire would have been Coleman, and that would have helped in the portal. Like, continuity helps. It's harder to recruit a Wyatt Hendrickson to a program when you don't know who the coach is. So Alira's announced he's probably going to make his decision. We're recording this on May 16. I'm guessing by next week when we come out, he'll have announced. Now, that's the beautiful thing about wrestling, GT. I said to Mark one day, like, I wondered if we're going to have anything to talk about this week. And then the David Taylor news pops on Monday night. And listen, you're my good friend. We probably talk once a week. I think we talked 6 times on that Monday, you know, and like business stuff and everything, you know, like, hey, whatever you know, I know kind of thing, right? And that's where your real friends are. So I think it's an exciting time for college wrestling. You know, the status quo, when the status quo gets shaken, it's a different, it makes people, gets people moving emotionally one way or the other. So I wanted to talk about, I want to do this in a different order. Gable Steveson's posting he's visiting like the Buffalo Bills. There's reports out that he has another year of eligibility. Okay. So it feels like he can go one in 4 directions. I was talking to my mom and dad about this on Mother's Day. By the way, happy belated Mother's Day. All wrestling moms out there, you guys are the best. Any of us that accomplished anything in life probably had an awesome mother. So he can just go get a real job in the real world, you know, go be an accountant, whatever. That's highly doubtful. He can go UFC or /MMA. He can go football, or he can come back for another year. Do you have any knowledge at all about whether he has another year or not?
I do not work in the admissions department, so I have no idea. But from what I've seen and or heard from people is that like he does have another year of eligibility left. So I think that is a large option. My heart tells me that like Sean McDermott at the Buffalo Bills, he brings in a lot of wrestlers in order to try to like determine whether or not they could be football players and whatnot. And I think it's also pays off dividends to bring in somebody like Gable Steveson, just to see like what happens. But I don't think that he's going to, you know, end up being an NFL player.
Right.
But once again, I think you kick the tires on it a little bit and just see what happens. I think the combat sports arena is where he's going to land in the world of wrestling and in MMA. So, you know, I think the way that the world of NIL and the collectives work, and I think if you have a resume as a 23-year-old Olympic gold medalist and one of the best collegiate heavyweights of all time,
yeah,
I think you go back to that arena and you make that, you know, I think you're priority number one. Because I think one, and I think that we talk about this business-wise, the way that athletes are incentivized now in the collegiate game is unparalleled for athletes.
Yeah. I mean, 250 to 500,000 for him. I mean, it could be more. I mean, you heard $1 million the last time for him to go wrestle and then train out of there for the Olympic cycle. I mean, now, you know, it'd be harder to get him to commit for 4 years to wrestling, but like 500,000 does not sound like an unrealistic number based on what you and me and multiple other sort of people in the know have heard. The other thing it does for him business-wise is it gets his name back out there to the people that are casual wrestling fans, right? And then that builds his ability to earn equity quickly inside the UFC or PFL. You know, so like, I mean, I think most people know I have a relationship with Randy Couture, and like me and him were texting about it. Like, you know, hey, PFL would love to have Gable. I'm like, I'll bet, you know, like that's a big get there, right? Yeah. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens there. So I need to pull up a text. I am going to be at the P&L this weekend in Omaha, so I won't be real far from your neck of the woods, GT.
Yeah?
Yeah, they're doing a very cool event. I want to do the read correctly. Zach Wilcox, their director, sent it to me. They're doing an outdoor dual meet tournament on a baseball field in Papillion.
Yep.
That's how you pronounce that town. So it says, Premier National League is excited to bring you the 2024 PNL Freestyle Duels at Warner Park. Catch the action in person at Warner Park in Papillion, Nebraska, or on Rockfin. Gates open at 12:30. First whistle at 1. Placing matches at 6:30. Teams in action include Askren Wrestling Academy, Izzy Style, My Wrestling Club Wrestling Academy, Pinnacle, Bear Cave, Immortals, Michigan Grappler, and Greater Heights. And so we'll be streamed on P&L Rockfin channel. Should have put that in. He actually already told me that. So it's will be on the P&L Rockfin channel. So if you go to Rockfin, people don't know, like you got to go to the specific channel. So I talked about this earlier. I went to their tournament to get reps prior to the Olympic trials and saw some outstanding wrestling. I'm assisting with those guys on their event, their national championship version in November, which will be in Kansas City. So I wanted to save this for last, and I think it's important. I just wanted to mention Art Martori because the Sunkist kids are officially shutting down business after the Olympics. But pretty much there's nothing else they would need to support between now and the Olympics. I'd have to do a head count on which of these athletes are Olympic athletes, but I'd like to tell a quick story, GT, and this is probably before you and I worked together. Several years ago, Lee Pritz got Art Martori to do a podcast with me. And it's back when we did it on the phone, and I was terrified. Like, I mean, for people that don't understand, Art Martori probably saved Olympic wrestling. And, like, he's the GOAT that the other GOATs look up to. Like, you ask Kenny Monday, John Smith, Jordan Burroughs, down the line, Art Martori, and even people that wrestle for Titan that didn't wrestle for Sunkist understand who Art is. And so I think I've gotten better at podcasts. I just write down topics now, and I trust my ability to speak on them, especially if it's like you and me, because we're we want to help each other out. But in the long form interviews, it's really topics, and I just try to follow the person I'm interviewing. I had all these questions written down for Art because people said he's kind of quiet, he's kind of reserved. And I blew through 10 questions in 11 minutes. Like I would be like, well, hey, John Smith said this about you. What do you think about John? Like, John was a great wrestler. We're happy to help him. Like, that was the whole answer, but he's just that guy. He doesn't need to, he doesn't have to do that. He didn't have to do the interview. And sometime we'll tell you the story about how Pritz got the interview because it's absolutely hilarious. But it came down to, I had 2 questions left. I'm like, this is going to be the worst podcast ever. And I said, well, Rich Bender told me one time that you tried to kill him and some dune buggies and this. And he goes, no, they were snowmobiles. And just the podcast took off. The interview took off. And he was amazing. And he told so many stories. Like he said that they figured out the women's weight classes originally, him and Trish Saunders with a notebook sitting in the stands. And, they're just like the names that he drops are like just casual, and you're in that circle. You work with everybody. So but the funniest thing was when we got to the end of the podcast, I would always tell the guys like, hey, please stay on, so we can kind of sign off. And I was like, well, Art, I can't tell you I can't describe what a privilege and honor this was. It was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. He goes, David, I didn't really think I was going to like it. It wasn't that bad. And then just just OG'd me, if that's a verb. And it was awesome. I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, that was the great Art Martori. So I'll always be grateful to Art for giving me an hour. I think it really helped me grow in this role. Like, people don't get to talk to that guy for an hour, period. Like, unless you're in the inner circle. And I'm not in the inner circle. I'm not even sure I'm in the outer circle. I might not even be on the mat. But it was a huge honor. I took it really seriously. But that guy has had more impact on wrestling of any person that most people don't know. He's had more impact on wrestling than anybody. So you see this sport on the mat level and at 50,000 feet. You have to. That's your job. I just wanted to give you the floor to talk a little bit about Art before we sign off.
Well, I was fortunate enough to go to the Art Martori event at the Olympic team trials, and we got to hear from some of their past, athletes. The first ever Sunkist kid, and once again, I can't. I'll think of his name after the interview, and I'll kick myself in the pants. But I think the people that would be maybe don't know Art, but may know the current Art Martori, which is Andy Barth and Titan Mercury Wrestling Club. Art was the founder of what the RTC system would be, along with the New York Athletic Club. I want to make sure that the New York Athletic Club and what they were doing, and currently with Dave Foxon at the helm there, has really, really kept Olympic wrestling hopefuls, one, kind of employed, and to be able to do the things that they got to be able to do in order to compete at the highest levels. So I think wrestling constantly needs an influx of people that are willing to financially support and also give their time, effort, their hearts, their minds to help these athletes to be able to achieve their goals. And I think that you can see that in the people that are the greats, the Kenny Mondays of the world, the Matt Gafaris of the world, Kendall Cross, the people that have been, Jordan Burroughs, Helen Maroulis, to name some of the current, and like Dom Parrish, people that that are a part of that system right now, that are Olympians, or world team members, or gone on to do really great things. I think personally, one of the things that I would probably mention is that I was never good enough to be able to wrestle for Sunkist kids, but I know that my coach Bobby Douglas and Art Martori were lifelong friends from his time at Arizona State, and how much they had a relationship and friendship outside of the sport of wrestling, but also through what they were able to achieve together. And then also just knowing, the people that the Nate Gallick, Trent Paulson, Cale Sanders, like the guys that I knew the closest that were a part of that, have nothing but amazing and fond memories of their times wrestling for Sunkist kids, what Art did for them personally, and be able to let them continue to pursue their Olympic dreams. So I think the wrestling community lost a giant, but I don't think that he's completely out of the sport. I think he's still going to be a fan. I think he's still going to watch. But I think from his supporting days, Art's been a pillar for the wrestling community in the U.S. for decades.
Yeah. I did more pre-interviews for that podcast. Like I called John Smith, talked to him for 5 minutes, called Kenny Monday, called Rich Bender, probably called Kendall Cross, like a bunch of those people you said, like James Green's another guy, Sunkist guy, like called these people that I had relationships with or sort of had relationships with and said, they were all like, oh my God, Art's going to do an interview. That's the thing, that was their first reaction. So just an absolute blessing that man has been to any of us that love wrestling. Like, I don't think wrestling would look the same, if it wasn't for him. And that sounds so nebulous, but let's just say wrestling would be significantly worse without Art Martori. And, talk about a person that's had influence and changed the world, our sport in a better way. By the way, guys, if you're not, you need to follow Grant Turner on social media. The pictures are great. The food of the day alone is worth following Grant Turner for. He did. If you're watching this, his face was genuinely shocked. He's writing a note over there about one of the 9 business things he's got going on, but he didn't know I was going to say this. So what are your handles, GT, so people can follow this stuff? Because it's your food of the day stuff alone. And I'm trying to get back on my keto, but it's very, very tempting what you're posting. Oh, yeah.
So that happened. I think the weird food post of the day started when I went to Japan. And legitimately some of the weirdest foods I've ever encountered in general. We're just like, you know what? We got nothing else to do. We're stranded we're stranded in a hotel. The only thing that we were really doing every day was like working out, watching the Olympics, and having weird food. Like, all right, well, today, guess what we're having today, guys? We're having quail eggs and soy, like soy sauce. I'm like, oh my gosh. And we got it from a vending machine. It's like, okay. But yeah, it's a good time, brother.
Give them your handles. Handles.
It's just GTurner174 on Instagram, and then Tuna GT 174 on Twitter.
Give my man a follow. It's like I try to post something inspirational every day. It's not, hopefully it's motivational. It's not nearly as entertaining as Grant's. So right, and the airplane pictures are always great too. You're always perfect. So
this is so funny when it comes to I think just social media in general. It's like, hey, I posted a picture of like us winning a national title at Grandview. I have one weird food post of the day. It's like triple the amount of like
the one where you guys are all jumping down like 100 likes. This one's like 1,000 likes for the food. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is great. Like, the one thing that I think has been the most positive, and I think one of the things about social media in general, it can be used for a positive manner.
Yeah.
Because the internet is a dark and scary place.
Yes.
To quote my friend Wreck-It Ralph. But I think it does bring people together from a standpoint of like, oh, like I had somebody cook that for me or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was over there. Or it's like, I loved the experience that I had in Japan. Or you're like, hey, my aunt and uncle are from Japan. They say that that's the best thing ever. So it's one of those things that like for the good of, just connection, it does resonate with a lot of people. So it's a lot of fun.
Or your podcast partners is half Japanese. Like that could also be a thing.
Yeah.
It's theoretically possible that's on the board.
Yeah.
So we may talk about AAPI month before it's over. So anyway, for Mark on the train, for Grant, who's back on the ground, welcome back, brother. I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll speak to y'all next week.